The dawn of a new global conflict wouldn't arrive with a formal declaration or a traditional military invasion. Instead, it would unfold as a chain reaction and planned, chaotic, and devastating. The world has never been more interconnected, nor more fragile. In a multipolar era defined by rapid technological advancement and rising geopolitical tensions, a single spark could engulf the planet. Here's how the first 24 hours of World War III might unfold. Hour 0. The spark at 4 a.m. GMT, the world changes. A barrage of Chinese missiles targets key military infrastructure in Taiwan. Communication satellites are jammed, naval blockades are formed, and plie forces land on the island. Beijing claims it's a necessary unification operation, but for the rest of the world, it's a declaration of war. Almost immediately, global stock markets react. In Tokyo, emergency sirens echo as Japan scrambles its self-defense forces. In Washington, D.C., the president is taken to a secure underground facility. NATO enters emergency session. The Indo-Pacific, one of the most militarized regions on Earth, comes ground zero for a conflict the world has feared for decades. Hour 2. Shockwaves across the globe. As Taiwanese resistance stiffens, the U.S. orders to aircraft carriers in the Pacific to reposition near the island. China warns that foreign intervention will be met with forceful consequences. Meanwhile, North Korea launches a missile test into the Sea of Japan, signaling its alignment with China and a willingness to exploit the chaos. In Moscow, the Kremlin declares support for Beijing and condemns Western aggression. Russian naval vessels shift positions in the Arctic and Baltic Seas simultaneously. Unidentified cyberattacks hit power grids in Eastern Europe, leaving millions without electricity. NATO suspects Russian involvement. Hour 6. Europe on the edge. Then comes the incident that throws Europe into the heart of the conflict. A Russian missile, possibly accidental, strikes a small town in Poland, killing civilians. NATO's Article 5's, the principle that an attack on one member is an attack on all, hangs in the balance. While leaders hesitate to escalate, military forces are mobilized. German tanks roll toward the eastern border. French fighter jets begin patrolling the skies over Romania. The EU declares a state of emergency. Global oil and gas prices surge as markets anticipate energy cutoffs from Russia. Panic begins to set in, not just among politicians, but in everyday households. Hour 9, the Middle East ignites. While the world watches the Pacific and Europe, the Middle East erupts. Israel, fearing Iran might exploit global distraction to develop nuclear capabilities unchecked, conducts an airstrike on an Iranian nuclear facility. Tehran responds with missile barrages on Israeli military bases. Hezbollah launches rockets from Lebanon. U.S. forces in Iraq and Syria are targeted by Iranian-backed militias. The Strait of Hormuz, through which 20% of global oil passes, is blocked. Oil prices double overnight. Global markets plunge into chaos. Economies already weakened by inflation, debt, and resource shortages begin to spiral. Hour 12. The age of cyber and misinformation. By midday, the internet itself becomes a war zone. Massive cyber attacks strike critical infrastructure in the US, UK, and South Korea. Banks freeze, airports halt operations, hospitals turn to backup generators, entire cities lose power. Social media platforms are flooded with deepfake videos, some showing world leaders declaring war, others surrendering. No one knows what's real. Disinformation campaigns sow confusion, fear, and panic among the public. Trust in institutions starts to collapse. This isn't war in the traditional sense. It's total information warfare. And no country is fully prepared. Hour 15. The Korean Peninsula reacts amid the chaos. North Korea sees an opportunity. It launches a surprise artillery strike across the DMZ. South Korea retaliates immediately, targeting known missile silos and military bases. Seoul, a city of over 10 million, descends into panic. Civilians flood into subways and bunkers. The U.S. pledges full support to its South Korean ally. China urges restraint, but its military continues moving assets toward Taiwan. There are now multiple active battlefronts in East Asia alone. Hour 18. South Asia's nuclear tinderbox. As world leaders struggle to contain the conflict, a new front opens. India detects unusual Pakistani military activity near the Kashmir border. Tensions skyrocket. Skirmish erupts at a checkpoint. India responds with limited airstrikes. Pakistan retaliates. Both nations, armed with nuclear weapons, place their arsenals on heightened alert. The world watches helplessly. The conflict threatens to draw in China, a Pakistani ally, and the US, increasingly aligned with India. The possibility of a nuclear exchange, once unthinkable, now feels horrifyingly real. Hour 21. Global alliances shatter. NATO finally invokes Article 5, confirming that the missile strike in Poland was indeed of Russian origin. Massive troop deployments begin across Eastern Europe. Russian bombers are spotted near Scandinavian airspace. The US conducts targeted airstrikes on military assets in Belarus and Kaliningrad. Beijing issues a chilling warning. Further aggression in Taiwan will result in the full mobilization of the People's Liberation Army. The UN is powerless. Diplomats are evacuated. The era of diplomacy is over, replaced by brute force and zero-sum calculations. Hour 24. The point of no return at the 24-hour mark. The global situation is unrecognizable. Taiwan is half occupied. Eastern Europe is militarized. The Middle East burns. Cities across the globe are without power. Stock markets remain suspended. Billions are glued to their screens, watching the unraveling of the modern world order in real time. Rumors of a tactical nuclear weapon being moved to the Russian exclave of Kaliningrad begin circulating. Washington responds by raising the US nuclear alert level. Bunkers across America are readied. World leaders from Paris to Beijing go underground. It's no longer a question of if the conflict will escalate, but how soon and how devastatingly, a war that starts it all. This imagined day zero isn't fantasy. It's a plausible, evidence-based extrapolation of real-world tensions, technologies, and rivalries. The world today sits on a geopolitical fault line more dangerous than at any point since World War II. One misstep, an errant missile, false cyber attribution, an overreaction to a provocation could lead to a cascade of irreversible events. We may not be at war yet, but the countdown, many argue, has already begun.